All right, so everybody, it's episode 14 of the More Knowledge Show, coming to you live outside in the United States of America. You're probably watching this on Sunday or Monday. We record on Sundays and we post either on Sunday or Monday, but you're most likely watching this on Monday. So anyway, if you've been paying attention, which hopefully you have to some degree, you've seen that the ECB has cut interest rates more into negative territory, which was expected. They are restarting their bond buying program, which was also it was also kind of expected. And yeah, and the reception that that's being heard from this is that I'm hearing a lot of, it's what they have to do, but it's not going to do anything. So pretty much we're in a position where central banks have to do all these insane things. We have to have, negative 5% interest rates. We have to print a bunch of money and basically do quantitative easing and for an extremely long time. So we're gonna have to do all these things in order to produce nothing. It's basically what we're being told. So nobody's really expecting that it's actually gonna work. And if nobody expects it's gonna work, then it kind of it takes away the point of stimulus. Because when you're trying to stimulate the economy, what you're really doing is you're stimulating people's minds. Because at the end of the day, that's what an economy is. It's a collection of minds making their own decisions, exchanging things, trading, investing. But it's all around their own decision-making process that goes on in their head. And that's kind of what happens when you try to cut interest rates. You stimulate their mind. You stimulate people's minds into thinking, the interest rates are low, so I'm going to so that means there's more money available for me to take that money and invest it or spend it. That's kind of the point. But it's all in the brain. But if people see an interest rate cut and they're like, well, it's not really going to have much impact, it's not really going to, nothing of this is really going to happen, then you're not really going to stimulate their brain. The only thing that you're going to do is you're going to prevent their brain from expecting something worse. So you're kind of misleading people from making smart decisions. That's really what you're doing. Because if people made smart decisions, the entire financial system would collapse. Because everyone would leave it. Everyone would demand their money back because they would realize that they would realize how fundamentally off the financial system is. How many problems there are. So if people were able to use their brains without the impact of these other things, it would probably be a collapse. But it doesn't really stimulate, it just kind of keeps people where they are. But it's taking more and more of this stimulus, which is not really stimulating people, to keep them at the same level, to keep them spending at the same level, to keep them investing their money at the same level. And it's going to get to a point where you can increase stimulus, but the economy is going to continue to get worse. And that's kind of what's already happening. In fact, the Eurozone, that entire area, it's been like everything, like every single country has been getting worse if you look at the numbers. But and they have negative interest rates, so it's obvious that none of this is actually stimulating people's minds. It's not tricking anyone. And I think as people realize how all of this stuff that the central bank does, it does not really work anymore, the central bank is going to lose a lot of its powers. Because the central bank, it really gets its powers from tricking people into thinking it has power. I mean, it does have power. Okay, it can print money. We got to remember, the money they print technically isn't worth anything, but it's worth something because they can trick us into thinking it's worth something So if you look at it as a whole, their power comes from tricking us into thinking that they have power, and by people not really people for people to lose confidence in the central bank's ability to save the economy and to get the economy running again. People are losing confidence in what the central bank can do, and that is basically taking away their powers, their ability, and eventually, when people lose complete faith, they're going to leave the entire system. And when people just, when I say just leave the entire system, I mean like people are going to pretty much ask for their money back. That's what a financial panic is. It's when everyone at the same time asks for their money back. They can ask for their money back from the stock market, from the bond market, from any market, from their bank. People could walk to the bank and ask for their money back, and they're going to, or they could just ask for their wealth back. They could take their wealth and pull it out of money and put it into something else. They could put it into land. They can put it into water, food. Any of these other things could be used as wealth. So when people at the same time all try to take their money out, when they try to take their wealth out of money, in the past they used to take their money out of assets or just take their money out of the economy. But when people start taking their wealth out of money, then the money is worthless. And when that happens, that's when the entire thing is going to have to completely be restructured into something completely different. Because when the money that is created by, the powerful people, when the money that they give us is not accepted by us, their entire thing has failed. But, like I say a lot, I do believe that those people in power know that's going to fail, and they are expecting it to fail, and they're preparing for once things do fail, to come in and kind of really assert their control over us in a much more restrictive way. Because what they're doing is they're going to destroy this system to build a new one, and the new one is going to be the one that's really bad. So if you think the system that we currently live in has so many problems, I'm just saying, if when the new one comes along, they're not even going to try to hide it. Right now in the current system, they actually try to hide a lot of things from us. They try to hide many of the things that's going on, or they don't hide it, but they don't really, they don't really project it to people what's going on behind the scenes. For example, like a lot of people, when they put their money in the bank, people do not realize that money isn't yours anymore. When people just throw their money in the stock market to buy fully overvalued stock, people do a lot of things that are just considered to be normal things, but people don't really think about what they're actually doing. But after this system breaks down and fails, what replaces it, people will know exactly what's going on. People are going to realize how terrible it is, but they're not going to be able to do anything about it, because we're going to be completely under control of this this elite group of people who have been in charge of the current world we live in right now. But their power is just going to grow, and that's kind of been their plan. And it's not really that surprising. I mean, whenever you have a few people just planning everything, a few people who are just manipulating everything, they're going to try to reach for more power. That's nothing new. That's just how humans are. If you allow people to have that much power without, if you allow people to be able to just manipulate things, they're going to try to continue doing it to the fullest degree they can, to the point where they have complete and ultimate control. That's how humans will always be, and that's what's going on right now. And also another thing, besides this collapse that I've always been talking about, you know, one thing that could potentially cause the collapse would be a currency war, which is also something that I'm pretty sure I've talked about before. I believe this. I believe the trade war is getting a lot of talk, but the real war is a currency war. A currency war, I believe, has potential for much more destruction than a trade war. Okay, because I think a currency war affects pretty much everybody, and a currency war could easily cause this current system to fall apart. And the reason why I say that we're in a currency war is that we see all these countries trying to increase inflation. They're trying to increase their exports, and they're doing this by lowering the value of their own currency. And they're lowering the value of their own currency by printing a lot of money, lowering the interest rates, and trying to increase inflation. That's really the goal. A lot of these central banks, they want to increase inflation because people think it's a great thing. I mean, that's just how people think. And we're seeing this directly from the president of the United States, who is one of the most powerful people in the entire world, who's pretty much saying that we need to lower our interest rates to negative interest rates so we can be just like Europe. I'm not sure why we would want to be like Europe if you see what's going on in Europe, but that's apparently the direction our president wants us to head in. But the type of language we are seeing is of a currency war. We are seeing countries everywhere collectively together attempt to devalue their currency. And by definition, that is technically a currency war. They may not come out and say, we are trying to competitively lower the value of our currency. They're probably not going to say that because that would cause a lot of panic. But it's what's going on behind the scenes, and it's pretty obvious. All right, we are in a currency war, and I think a currency war, it doesn't really end because countries just keep on trying to put pressure down on their currency, and they each keep on doing it until eventually, the only way for a currency war to really end is when people just lose faith in the currency. And when people ask, how could someone just lose faith in a currency? There are quite a few ways for that to happen. It could be a political reason. It could be like country has a lot of debt and they need to print a lot of money to pay that debt. It could be stuff like that. But I think right now, probably the catalyst for a complete currency collapse would be a global currency war, which would tear down not just the system of America or the system of the Eurozone. It would tear down the entire global monetary system. And I think that's probably one of the biggest risks. That's the highest probability of tearing down the global system would be a global currency war. Because when, I think right now people do not realize that we're in a currency war. But when people do realize we're in a currency war, people are going to realize that currency wars do not end. It is not really just end. The only way it ends in a complete reset. So if a system is pretty much guaranteed to collapse, which is what happens when you enter into a currency war, you're basically confirming the collapse of the system. People panic, and that would be extremely, extremely bad. And I think right now there's a pretty good incentive to not want to make everyone aware that we're in a currency war. So what they do is they try to make people focus on the trade war. The trade war is pretty serious. It is, no doubt. I mean, it's, our system as a whole relies a lot on trade. But I'm telling you, a currency war, a trade war, you have a lot better chance of ending a trade war without a complete systemic collapse. You can end a trade war. I don't think you can end a currency war, though. Because once these countries start to competitively devalue their own currencies, it's over, pretty much. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's over. The countries, they just keep on pushing down their own currencies until it ends. And it's pretty solid evidence that is what's happening when you hear it directly from the mouth of the president, who's pretty much saying what he wants the central bank to do, what he wants the treasury to do. He's openly went after the he went after the European central bank. He went after China. He's calling them currency manipulators, and all of this language is a type of language that you would hear when associated with a currency war. But a lot of the focus is on the trade war, and I think right now it's smart to keep on focused on the trade war. It's a lot easier to control a trade war. It's a lot easier to make people feel optimistic about a trade war. But when there's a currency war, what you're indirectly telling people is, we're going to competitively take the wealth away from our citizens. That's pretty much what you're saying. We're going to competitively, because that's what it means when they say, I'm going to devalue a currency, is we are going to, if your wealth is in a particular currency, if you hold American dollars, and then the president's saying that we are going to devalue those dollars competitively with another country who's going to devalue their currency, they're telling you that they are going to take away your wealth. And when people hear that, people do not like that, and it's not good for the economy to tell people that. So it's definitely in their interest to keep people focused on the trade war. And who knows, maybe the trade war will find a way to resolve itself. I do not. I mean, I just don't think that China is going to just completely just fold to America. But who knows? But I'm just going to tell you right now, the biggest risk is not the trade war, it is the currency war. But anyway, that kind of leads me into the next thing, is that when it comes down to analyzing things, I mean, I know I sit here and say, like, the currency war is, it could tear down the system, but you really don't know what it will be. In our current world right now, the only thing certain is uncertainty. We don't really know what event will be the event to completely tear everything apart. Like, all of these things, it's impossible to calculate, because there's things known as black swan events, which are basically events that are impossible to predict. But I mean, of course, if you look back in time, it's easy to say, well, it's obvious that it was going to happen if you look at all these factors. But in present time, it's pretty much impossible to put those factors together and predict a potential black swan event. But what you can say is there are more risks. There are more potential things that are going on that could potentially turn into crises. But you don't know which ones will. But they're increasing overall. So you have a trade war, you have Brexit, you have things in Italy, you have things in the Middle East. Just recently, there was a drone attack on Saudi Arabia oil. It was a drone attack. It's probably going to increase the price of oil. But see, it's just things like this. There are increased risks that exist. You can know for certain that there are increased risks, but you can't know for certain which of these risks will turn into a crisis. But it doesn't take all of them to turn into a big crisis. It only takes one or two. So if you look at the entire globe, you think of all these problems that are increasing. I would say that they are increasing for sure. They're getting a lot worse. And then all it takes is just one or two of these problems. Maybe it is the trade war. Maybe it's the currency war. I believe a currency war is more dangerous than a trade war. But you don't really know for certain. But what you can know for certain is that there's definitely a higher probability of something happening that can set off a catastrophic event for our entire system. And So I'm saying that because a lot of times you hear on the internet, you hear people say like they know exactly what's going to happen. You know, World War III is going to break out in exactly 3 years. You really can't predict that. It could, but I'm just trying to say the only thing you really can't predict is how much uncertainty is in the system. And right now, I would say it definitely has increased. Things are not as stable. They've gotten progressively more unstable. And if you pair that instability with all these other issues, you pair that with a slowing economy that's just already slowing by itself without these problems. If these instabilities become crises, that would turn the slowing economy into a collapsing economy. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to say for this week of the More Knowledge Show. Some things to look out for is that this week, the Federal Reserve is expected to cut interest rates. And, you know, it's always something that just pops up out of nowhere that you really can't predict. But I would say there's a higher chance of something popping out of nowhere that ends up being a catastrophe, that ends up being really bad. That's the type of environment that we live in, so you really never know. I mean, you could wake up tomorrow morning, turn on the news, and then everything that I've been predicting has just come true. Or it could take years. But I would say that we are a lot closer to it now than we were 10 years ago, like in the last financial crisis. We are closer to the end game now than we were then, and we're going to continue to get closer until something eventually does break and things really start happening. Anyway, have a great week. Yeah, I'll see y'all next Sunday/Monday.